Welcome back everybody. Today we're gonna play Cypher on Split. Today is day 109 of playing every agent on every map. Today's agent Cypher is probably one of the best agents in the game. He is one of the best sentinels in the game and he can keep a lot of map control without really needing to be in a certain place. He is perfect for lurking and he can be used in a lot of different ways, especially if you know a lot of trips you could use. You can set your team up for easier rounds, especially on defense. But also you can help your team a lot on entering, on attack, with aggressive cages you can walk through without the enemy really expecting you. And again, your cam is also a pretty good information tool. It isn't quite as good as a Sova dart or a Sova drone, but it is still pretty decent. Starting off with A-side defense. As a Cypher, it is really important that you have a lot of map information. You can keep that on A-side with a cam up here. This cam right here can see into the ramp area right here without the enemies being able to see that cam, and you can get a lot of information. You can also see into main as long as they don't smoke heaven. With a cam like this, you can then either decide to play on site or even play in heaven. For site, there's a couple of really good trips. One I really like is this trip right here. It is a really long trip, goes all the way over to site and starts right here. It is a pretty hard trip to see. When you walk in, you can see this part pretty well, but most of the times, especially if you have a cage that is around here, you should be pretty safe with a trip like that. Another trip I really like as well is one like this, that is really deep. The enemies can take a lot of space, but you can just basically chill here on your cam, see the people walking through, hold ramp, wait for somebody to walk into your trip, and then you can just spam them through this wall right here, or even with a cage right here, play around that cage, even peek maybe from this side, shoot them from here, and in general do a lot of damage to the enemies. Another trip which I really like is one like this. This cross trip right here is also pretty hard to shoot for the enemies, because it is firstly, again, pretty deep, and secondly, it is also in a really unexpected spot. And then one last trip I really like is one like this, where you have a trip going over here. You also have the information over anyone coming in. You can also place that one higher, by the way, on head level, so nobody can walk through. And you can use that as an information tool to make sure nobody is walking through. Use the cam even in heaven. If the enemies like have a smoke right here, you're gonna get the information if they are pushing towards screens right here. Switching over towards mid now. On mid, there's an unbreakable trip, or it's really hard to break actually. It is this trip right here. It will get you a lot of mid information, and it is also insanely good to play from this spot right here. You can place this trip almost every round and not play off of it yourself. You yourself are gonna go over towards B and hold B, and then you use this trip here in mid to stop the enemies from taking mid space. This trip is also really good because most of the enemies that walk up right here gonna get all the way close here, try to break this trip. Yeah, they can see it, but again, if they are close here, you can get all the way close here as well. You can play in this close corner right here. You can also play in this off angle right here and just peek into the people that are playing in mid, because they have to wait in front of the trip. And again, if you are playing this trip right here, I recommend you play on B. What I like doing on B is to place a cam up here. It is the best known cam. It also gets broken pretty quickly, but it again is a one-way cam you can use to get information over main without the enemies really noticing it. Then for B itself, you can use trips right here. There's also this trip right here, which is pretty good. Also the option to put a trip right here, that is pretty strong. Or the trip right here, that goes really deep. It's also pretty hard to break. They all tend to get broken pretty easily if the enemies are like coming in slow, but if they are going in fast, especially if they have like a neon or a race, they are gonna get tripped by this trip most of the times, and the other trips are just in general pretty good to play off, and you can play off of them with a cage right here. Pop that cage. If you see anyone, shoot them through. If you see anyone through this wall, you can shoot through all of this wall. Again, I recommend a Phantom on a Cypher because it doesn't leave any bullet tracers. And it is also pretty hard to spot where the enemies are shooting from. Other than that, you can also use a cage right here to stop the enemies from coming in and get information. Or it also repositions you. It also allows you to reposition it to a lot of different spots. And again, I recommend if you want to play a Cypher on a couple of different maps, you just go through the map and check for spots where you can place trips. You can also use like trips like this one right here, which is a pretty strange trip. You can find out that this trip actually works sometimes, and it is pretty hard to spot. And you can get kills with a trip like that. But again, just try out, try to find new spots. Again, boxes like these that have like round corners are really good for Cypher trips. As you can see, you can place them all around that corner. Same thing here, also here, or like this corner. There's a lot of different spots where you can place trips. And in general, you can use them in a lot of different ways, always depending on what you're trying to do. And I don't recommend you play in front of your trips. You can do that sometimes to destroy like some util, for example. If they are always skydogging a main, you can play close here, break the skydog, and then get back to site and play with your setup. But most of the times I see a lot of Cypher players, especially in lower elo, peek out in front of their util, so they don't even get any value off of it. They might have like the best trips in the game, nobody can get through, and the enemies, especially in lower elo, tend to walk into them pretty often. But they are like not using them right, but because they just peek in front of the util, which makes their util pretty much useless. Switching over towards attack. On attack, you can use a cam up here, right here, almost every round. You get information over people trying to play really close here in the beginning of the round, or playing close here as well. Or you can even get information over if somebody is, for example, playing on heaven, if they are throwing util from there. Most of the times I'm using this cam almost every round. It doesn't matter if we are going B or if we are going A. I go towards A, place this cam, place a flank trip like this, and then I go over towards my team, or I even stay right here, wait in this exact corner right here, because this is a really hard corner to clear out for the enemies. If they decide to push A, you can just wait here and collect your free kills, because most of the times they're not going to check this corner, and you also get the information over anyone pushing flank with your trips and your cam. And in general, this spot right here is a pretty good one if you're just deciding to wait if the enemies are always pushing. Other than that, you can also get on top of these boxes and then aim for this spot right here on ramp to get a cage that is perfectly for ramp, that blocks the enemies off from peeking, which is a pretty strong thing, especially if they decide to go A pretty fast and the enemies have, for example, an op that is playing ramp. Switching over towards mid now. On mid, you can do a lot of different things. You can also do the same thing as you are doing on attack. It is a trip like this one, stop the enemies from pushing down mid. Or even if you decide to go mid with your whole team, you can use a cage right here and then use a trip inside of this cage. Stop enemies from pushing your flank pretty quickly. And in general, a trip like this can also get a lot of information for your team that is pretty good. Other than that, caging off here if you're deciding to go through vents is a pretty good thing. Same thing if you cage off here if you're deciding to go heaven. With a cage, you also get the information if anyone is trying to walk into these areas. And now switching over towards B. On B, you can place a trip right here. It is jumpable if the enemies have like really good movement. It is jumpable from both sides, by the way. You can jump on top of these boxes and then jump all the way up. But in general, most of the times nobody's going to jump over it and they're going to walk into this trip most of the times. If you want to make sure nobody's pushing out of B main, I recommend a trip like this. If you want to make sure nobody's pushing your flank, I recommend you are placing a trip like this. This one can be jumped if the enemies are good enough with a jump like this, but it is also a pretty hard jump to do, and the enemies are going to struggle with a jump like this. And if you think the enemies might do that, if you have like really good enemies, you can use a trip all the way back here. This trip is again jumpable from B main, but it can't really be jumped from over here. The enemies have to walk into it or updraft or use some util to get over. Other than that, if you are going towards B, you can get information, or you can use a cage right here close. Cage trigger. To isolate angles, you can even go inside of that cage. The cage right here is kind of a risky one because it kind of limits you on where you can go, but you can also decide to push through it, especially on Cypher, because most of the times the enemies are not really going to expect it, and you can catch a lot of people off guard, maybe even with some util in their hand. Again, you can also cage heaven to stop people from pushing out there, or you can use trips on heaven right here to stop the people from walking out as well, which are pretty unexpected, but I recommend you use at least one trip per flank. Other than that, you can also use a trip on CT, you can use trips on site to stop the enemies from trying to go for a defuse, especially if you have planted for the really good spot right here for main. A trip like this can get you a lot of information. And now for Cypher's ult. Cypher's ult is a pretty weird ult to use. I recommend if you have your ult and you are that you are going with your team, so you can ult on anybody your team gets. And if you are like playing a 1v1 or 1v2, your ult can be pretty useful, but most of the times I recommend you just use it if there's at least 3 enemies alive, or if you are in a clutch situation. If I had to give Cypher a rating from S to F on Split, I'd actually give him the S tier. He is, in my opinion, the best sentinel you can use on this map, because you get a lot of passive map information. You can also use him to get control over mid, and in general he's also pretty good to play on B, and also on attack you can get a lot of information with him. So playing a Cypher is a pretty good thing, especially with Cypher being pretty strong right now. He's probably one of the best sentinels in the game, especially in ranked. He's not quite as good the higher you get, because most of the times your util and your trips are going to get predictable and you can get them destroyed pretty easily. But if you keep on switching up your trips, switching up the sites you play, you should be able to carry your games on a Cypher. That would be it from me. If you want to see any other agents and any other maps, write them down in the comments. And if you want to see anything else Valorant related, write it down there as well. And as always, don't forget to like and sub, and come say hi to me on Twitch, where I stream almost daily. Have a great rest of your day, and see you guys very soon. Bye!